Hello, and welcome back for another adventure in the cookie jar. Today we are doing the 6th recipe in the carrot cake murder. That is the cocoa fudge cake with the chocolate fudge frosting. So for this recipe, it starts out with Hannah's first note. Marge says to tell you that she got this recipe from 2 girls she met on the bus to Fargo, Sandy and Patricia. They used margarine, but since Marge is from a dairy state and she knows that there's no substitute for butter, she uses regular salted butter in her cake. She says she made a couple of other changes too, but it's been so long she doesn't remember what they are. You're going to preheat the oven to 350 degrees, rack in the middle position. Before you start, grease and flour a 9-inch by 13-inch cake pan. You can also spray with Pam or another nonstick cooking spray and then dust it lightly with flour. I prefer the one that's the nonstick spray with flour. You're going to want 2 cups of white sugar, 2 cups of flour, don't sift, 1 cup butter, 2 sticks, 1 cup water, 3 tablespoons unsweetened cocoa powder, I used Hershey's, half a cup of milk, 1 teaspoon vanilla extract, 1 teaspoon baking soda, and 2 eggs beaten. Just whip them up in a glass with a fork. It is a little on the technical side from what I've been reading, because first you mix the sugar and the flour together, and then in a saucepan you're adding the butter, the water, and the cocoa powder. And then you're going to bring that to a boil, pull that off, and add that to the sugar and the flour. And then it has Hannah's second note. Marge says you shouldn't be a neatnik and wash your saucepan. If you make the frosting, you'll use it again. Then in a small bowl, you're going to whisk the milk, the vanilla, the baking soda, and the eggs. And then you're going to add that into the bowl with your sugar, flour, and chocolate ingredients. Then that's your eggs, and then into the cake pan for which it'll bake for 20 to 25 minutes. And then this cake is delicious without frosting or just lightly dusted with powdered sugar. If you want frosting, try the one below. Start making it 5 minutes before the cake is due to come out of the oven, and the frosting and the cake will be ready at the same time. For the chocolate frosting, you're going to want half a cup of butter, that's 1 stick, 3 tablespoons unsweetened cocoa powder, I used Hershey's, 1/3 cup of milk, 1 pound box of powdered sugar, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. The butter, the cocoa powder, and the milk go in the saucepan, and you are just going to boil it, stirring constantly. Remove it from the heat, add the vanilla, stir in the powdered sugar, half a cup at a time until it is thickened and still pourable. That's not a word, it should be. Pour the frosting on the hot cake and spread it out quickly with a spatula. Interruptions happen, and it's not always possible to finish the frosting at the same time you take the hot cake from the oven. For that reason, I've come up with an alternative fudge frosting, one that can be poured over a piping hot cake, a warm cake, or a stone cold cake. And then it does have a never fail fudge recipe. However, they also use this recipe later on for a peanut butter cake, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll use this one later, but right now we're going to go with the traditional chocolate frosting recipe. So everything is laid out. Let's get started. Here is everything we're going to be using to make the cake and the frosting. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is in our large bowl, the sugar and the flour. And we are just going to stir those together. Seems like they're all there to that. Next, we want the saucepan. We want our 2 sticks of butter. The water. And the cocoa powder. Butter, water, and cocoa. And that just goes on the stove until it boils. Here is the chocolate mixture. It's taken about 3 minutes. It's just starting to boil. So we're going to pull this off. So we have our chocolate mixture that is just boiling. And it says to pour it in with the sugar and flour. And it says not to rinse this out if we are making the frosting. So I'm just going to pop this back and sit it on the stove. Just let it sit there. And then let this mix slowly, I guess, so it doesn't splash. We are going to get a smaller bowl and we are going to add the milk, the vanilla extract, the baking soda, and the eggs. Give that a whisk. Now, this has eggs in it. This is hot. It doesn't really say how long you should wait to mix them. And I am concerned about that. So I think I'm gonna wait until this cools down a little bit and then I'll stream these in slowly. Because I really want to avoid cooked chocolate egg cake. Actually, that doesn't feel very, that feels fine. Okay. So I'm just going to drizzle this in. Now, this seems super loose for a cake mix, and that is highly concerning because it seems really thick and lumpy at the bottom. What? I don't know what's going on here, folks. I don't know. Okay, so sprayed and floured. In we go. Yes, there are none. So in it goes for 20 to 25 minutes. So it is about 5 minutes until the cake should be done. We have the butter, the cocoa powder, and the milk in the saucepan that we used earlier. We're just going to continuously stir this until it boils. So this frosting is taking a lot longer because it's only about a minute past till the 5 minute mark, and I haven't even started stirring in the vanilla or the powdered sugar. So I'm not quite sure about that 5 minute mark. It doesn't look like it's getting legit bubbles, but it's getting air pockets. So I am going to call that good. I'm going to take it off the heat, and we stir in the vanilla. And then the half a cup of sugar at a time. I'm not the biggest fan of this. It seems very lumpy. There is our frosting. The cake should be ready to come out of the oven. Test. Oh no. That is nowhere near done. Okay, so the cake just came out of the oven. In total, it probably took about 40 minutes. The frosting I ended up making early and then having to put it back into the oven, or the cake back in the oven because it wasn't completely cooked. So I kept it warm on the stove. And now we're just going to pour it on and smooth it out. This kind of makes me think of the icing you get off snack cakes. It has that kind of setting. But I see why they say you need to move quickly because it is kind of crusting over. This is what we ended up with. I'm going to give it a minute or two to set, and then we are going to cut into it and see what we get. It has taken a bit of time. It took a lot longer to bake it than it said it would. And it didn't say you could eat it hot or cold. So it did take a while to get it cool enough to get it out of the pan in one piece. But we have finally made it to the end of the cocoa fudge cake with the chocolate frosting. It needs a glass of milk. It is very rich, so not a lot of it's needed. It is good. It is very good. It's kind of, it's good in its simplicity. It's not overly complicated. It doesn't have a lot of extras in it. It is a straightforward, simple chocolate cake, chocolate frosting. Here you go, reminiscent back to the 80s, maybe even earlier than that. But it's very good for how simple the ingredients were. It was a little more complicated with having to essentially cook the frosting, and some of the cocoa powder and milk and water, I think, was even in it the first go round. So it was a little more complicated technical wise, but I think it came out. I think it's really good. Next week we are doing red velvet cookies. So that's another cake that's transformed into a cookie. Those usually are always interesting. If you are wanting to see how those turn out, join us next week. I hope you all have a good one. Bye.